David, contain yourself. You are a shirtless model. That's what we were just talking about, how that's his dream.
The people need to watch the videos solely for my facial expressions that I do during the podcast.
You know what's so great about so just so everyone knows, we've released the videos full length on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel, Emotional Support Pod. And the one thing that was missing, I feel like throughout all of these years, is people were missing like what you do with your hands, because you're very much like me. You're Italian-esque, where it's like they're all over the place and so much is going on and you get so fired up. And then you give examples of like what things are based on your hand movements. And I'm like, David, we've been over this. No one can see the video. Like,
nobody can see the video.
Now they can.
I would be a director's worst nightmare because it's not only the hands,
right?
I'll like dip.
You dip
in and out.
Yeah,
you
do like funny facial expressions, like to like prepare yourself, like for your question, your answer. You're like, let me get into this. And I'm like, no one can see that. Like
nobody can see.
But now they can. So that's what's exciting.
As all white males should be. We should be more fun to look at than to be heard. So I'm trying my best to believe in a future that this world needs.
Well, David, it is about to be Valentine's Day. We wanted to do something a little spicy, a little different, and talk about our favorite subject, love. We did some amazing Q&As. I got so many questions. I didn't even know where to like stop or start. But since we're focusing on love today, I had a great question. And I have a little idea of how I would answer it, but you know, we're here for the good, scientific, factual neuroscientist, answer. So the question is how to fix my attachment style. So David, like, what's the deal with love in our brain?
I keep telling myself that I'm not going to use this podcast as a platform for me to teach people about all the random facts that have been stored in my brain over the last
how else are you going to get those random facts
years
out?
Of my education. Like any other white male should, who's in a sweater and a collared shirt, I will stand at the front of a university lecture hall that you pay $50,000 a year to attend, and I force you to listen to me.
I'm all about it.
But, you know, the times are changing, so you guys got to listen to me on the internet.
Yep. Times are changing.
Let's just like pick a random fact out of it. There are neurotransmitters in your brain. I feel like we talked about this before.
Yes.
Like the chemical imbalance hypothesis.
Right. There's
dopamine, there's glutamate, there's GABA, there's, you know, all of the things. Your brain is one big car engine essentially filled with a bunch of different fluids. And if you have too much or too little of those fluids, you have disease. SSRIs essentially attempt to boost the amount of serotonin in your brain to not make you sad or depressed. There's the whole internet craze right now of some other neuroscientist with his own podcast who won't be named. But so there's some truth to this. Where I'm going to this, I'm not going to rant about dopamine, at least not yet. Back in the olden days, and when I mean olden days, I mean like pre-2000s.
Right.
There was a lot of work that was done essentially being like, what is in the brain and how do neurons communicate with each other? Mm-hmm. So essentially, like brain cells touch each other. Like a lot of biological action is interpreted through contact.
Okay.
Some molecule bumps into another molecule, two cells touch each other, and then a reaction happens. So it's just really physics at the end of the day.
So it's like every first date.
Yeah. I don't know how much touching I was doing on first dates, but
heavy petting.
Like the amount of touching I wish I was doing to the amount of touching I was actually doing was like a weird delta that we're not going to get into. But yes, consensual touching. already off the rails.
Listen, I had to bring it that way. We're all thinking it, okay?
That's okay. Fine. We're all touching. But this is how, like, it's like forces, like with the basic physics, like motion, like things bump into each other. It's how reactions happen. Like the same applies to biology in your brain. So there's like a bunch of effort being like, not only do cells like bump into each other and contact and interact, but cells release molecules that then like float around in the ether and like float to different spaces and then touch other things for you and like places you can't reach beyond. This is a great hand motion.
Yes, this is a great one
that I'm doing.
Yes, yeah.
Anyway, so there was a lot of focus on like what are the things that those cells release if I like physically can't touch you because I'm too far away from you.
Right.
What do I release that then like floats through the ether and like does something in some other location? So like a lot of work was done on sort of like classical neurotransmission. So like chemicals, your nerves send electrical signals that cause chemicals to be released from them. They float across the synapse. They touch another neuron. The whole thing continues to tell you brain activity. They're like, what are those things? Glutamate, GABA, glycine, dopamine, serotonin. There's like a huge list of them. And then there's like the less classically known ones. Oxytocin is referred to as the love hormone.
Oh.
So when this was found in prairie voles, don't ask me how or why. A prairie vole, like the little things in the Midwest that like dig in the ground and like run around and then like pop their heads up. They've been wildly interesting.
That's where they found out where love comes from?
Yeah. So they have like really interesting social dynamics.
Okay.
On how their moms take care of their offspring. And they found that if you deplete oxytocin, they won't form bonds or connections. And then we realized that in humans that if you image for oxytocin when a mother is like breastfeeding a newborn baby or like is like falling in love, like your brain is releasing more of this chemical at those exact times.
Whoa.
So there's been a lot of like, what is the chemical? And then when is it released and in how much quantity? And then you can correlate that release to whatever behavior. So it seems that oxytocin and a couple other sort of neurochemicals are released around love. We found it in like a weird model organism. But yeah, so there's this idea that this has sort of perpetuated the idea that in neuroscience there are like specific chemicals for like every point in your life where there's the happiness hormone or there's the love drug and like all these sorts of things. And like, you know, like we really get into the weeds of it, we don't really know. But there are, you know, like it perpetuates this idea of like, only if I could inject a bunch of oxytocin, you know, like then I will fix my love and attachment theory. But like people try and do this. I mean, like I'll rant about dopamine now. And I promise I will get back to the original question here. This all leads somewhere.
It all goes somewhere.
I've lost like half the people already, whatever. You're trapped. I'm in your ears right now.
You're trapped like a rat.
So this idea that like it's correlated with these things, it might not be causal, but it's correlated with like, you know, love, bonding, happiness, sadness. So sort of the inverse is thought to be true as well. Like, you know, like people that have attachment issues or people that struggle with depression or people that struggle with reward and addiction. I'm now trying to just start to reverse hack these sorts of things.
Okay.
So like you'll hear about people doing dopamine fasts because they're like, every
and
time
is dopamine a pill?
No, dopamine's a neurotransmitter as well.
But can you put it in a pill? Like I'm saying, is there a way for us to like
order
have some dopamine? Like,
no, I mean, like there are like people that definitely try and take supplements to boost dopamine.
Okay.
So like the trendy one right now, I feel like I texted you about this. Like people trying to take L-tyrosine. So like a modified amino acid. There's 20 of them. You only get a number of them from your diet. You have to eat the rest of them. You have a bunch of enzymes in your body that convert these amino acids into other building blocks that your body needs to run. The idea is like, can we use basic sophomore year in high school chemistry and empirical formulas and be like, what if we dump a bunch of precursors into your body that then eventually turn into dopamine?
Right.
Ooh, I'll boost my dopamine. It doesn't work like that. It's like very like rate limiting steps and enzyme imbalance, all the fun stuff. And now I'm on a tangent. Anyway.
Right. So it doesn't work. So
guys,
you can get dopamine though from like going on Instagram and like getting that hit,
so that's
right? Or
saying.
like going
so,
on TikTok, getting a hit.
There's like getting hits of dopamine, essentially, like when it's not a reward chemical, but it's correlated with like when you're doing something rewarding or your body finds something that you're doing that is rewarding, you release dopamine. So people are like, I'm not going to do anything rewarding and trying to retrain my brain. I'm going to like quit Twitter and stop scrolling. Right. So then when I do things that actually bring me joy, I'm going to like reset how dopamine works in my brain.
Right. But does
it's
that
a signal
work?
The noise issue. No.
So,
but like...
Sure. But if it makes you feel better, then go for it.
But if it makes you feel better, go for it. It's like a great way to create content of like shirtless in the pool and you know, Hawaii, like with your professional photographer. Like it's great.
My thirst
you
trap.
have to be able to sit.
Yeah.
You have to be able to separate the like this is scientific fact from like this is how we operate.
It's like when I post like things about like mental health awareness and then I post a bikini shot. It's like that's my thirst trap. Like I'm like this is my brand.
Why not both? Why not both?
If the people want it, why not both?
Give the people what they want.
Give the people what they want.
But anyway, so where I'm going with this is there's some truth to this. The way that we try and intervene might not be the best way that we do it. Mm-hmm. But like, if you look at people, and I'm going to go to like the extreme ends of the spectrum in the way that I normally like to do this, who have like disattachment theory to like reality, like they're like no longer operating the same reality that we do. If you scan their brains, you put them in an MRI machine, you look at, I'm going to blow your mind. You can use magnets to actually sense how much dopamine is in your brain. Or like oxytocin, like when you sit in an MRI machine, like the way that water splits and electrons hit a magnet in a circle, you can actually measure the level of these things. It's weird. Anyway, so there's a way to measure people's like brain chemical systems while they're awake and moving and doing tasks. So like there's a bunch of stuff where like people will sit in MRI machines and you'll ask them, how do you feel? Right. Or like, here's 10 objects, rate the one that makes you feel the best. Rate the one that feels the work. We're going to poke you with a needle while you're sitting in there and give you a painful stimulation and see like how your brain chemistry changes. So if you look at people who feel disassociated, attached to the wrong things, the way in which their brain chemistry spikes like over time, like if I hand you your baby, your oxytocin will peak. Right. Like if you hand somebody a child that isn't theirs, it's not going to do. It's not going to change. Right. Right. So like I feel like there's actually a biological basis to maybe the way we treat about it. That maybe the chemical imbalance hypothesis is too simplistic. Mm-hmm. But there is something here to like the attachment idea of like there's something wrong in which not how much or how little of these hormones that I have, but like where they're arranged in space and how they happen, where you start to feel like, oh, something's wrong. Right, right. And like we have a lot of evidence that shows that maybe this is true. Right. And the way that we try and deal with that through therapy or pharmacology is like, doesn't ever really resolve this time constant in a way that I feel like we need to think about a little bit more critically. But I mean, like, in the simplest form, like, yes, like there are people who like struggle immensely. With interpersonal relationships, with, you know, like intimate relationships where they feel like, oh, I want this strong sense of connection. I feel like I should have this strong sense of connection. And maybe I'm not getting it. And like maybe the reason I'm not getting it is because there's something chemically wrong in my brain. Sure, sure. And like it might be real. Like, I don't know. You don't know. Don't listen to anybody who's going to tell you they know. Yeah. But I think that there is this idea of like, you know, like, so what do you do with it? Like I'm making fun of the dopamine people that are like, oh, I'm going to change my entire lifestyle. And now I'm going to sit here and be like, well, maybe you should change your lifestyle. Right, right, right. But I do think there is something to this idea of like, we have to try and reset. Like no amount of supplement, no amount of like drilling holes in the side of your head to release the pressure is going to change the way that your brain is genetically and environmentally wired. But I do think that there is some value in understanding that the nonsense of scientific evidence that I just let you down on this pathway to be like, look, like it's okay like you are not broken in the sense that like you need to change the chemical imbalances or neural circuitries in your brains to like have these meaningful relationships. But like the brain is a plastic thing.
Yeah.
It shapes, it forms, it adapts.
And it changes.
And I think that I see a lot of these people that are in these situations where they're like, I struggle with this, therefore I avoid it. And the only thing you're doing is reinforcing the fact that this is the way your brain should work if you avoid those problems.
So you should work through it so then you can reform that brain.
And I think it's difficult to like try and give people advice of just like the Nike slogan of just like, just go out and do the thing that makes you most terrified in the world. But like, hopefully we're getting to a spot where like, I like give you these scientific facts to not like stand on, but to like help support the idea that like we are all different. Our brains are all wired a little bit differently. Some are more optimized for some situations than other, but like we know that they can change. So like if you're having attachment issues, like I hope we can get to the point where someone could approach you and be like, hey, I really struggle with intimacy. And like having that conversation and being like the cultural expectation around like, this is how you should act if you love someone, or this is how you should feel, or these are the type of bonding moments that you should have. Right. And like, hey, maybe I'm not there yet, but like, is there a way to practice? Like, is there a way where me and somebody else, like in a controlled environment who understands that these are the struggles that I'm going through, like, can we work on this?
And do you think it's by working on it with like a partner, that someone that you just meet, or is it talking with friends or something and like, or
friends, family? I think even a therapist, like if you went in, I feel like we really suck at being good patients in therapy. Like if you went to a therapist and you were like, hey, I struggle with being intimate with my partner. Is there a way that we can build therapy around working on the things that I need to do to be more vocal or show, you know, like nonverbal communication in ways like you can partially, it doesn't just have to be talk therapy. You know what I mean? Like, it can be goal directed in the sense that, hey, we might not be able to inject your brain with more dopamine. Hey, we might not be able to like, you know, like give you synthetic forms of oxytocin, but like, can we pattern and like train in the same way that you would go outside and shoot free throws and like teach yourself to go through the repetition of those things, which is terrifying and scary. I hear you. Yeah. But I think that there is like a value to this. Like your brain is very plastic. You can teach old dogs new tricks and like engaging around this, like, yes, I might be bad at this very specific thing. That doesn't mean that I will be bad at it forever. And I really do think that the practice here makes proficiency in a way that we might often be scared to open up and talk about, you know, like I struggle to, you know, like do these sorts of things. Like, I think this sort of like, I will share a personal tidbit, even though nobody is.
Wow.
I really
this is a
struggle.
Personal moment. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, like, and I like from a traumatic experience that I had in my life, I really struggled with people touching me. And like, I felt like a weirdo for the longest time, like with my partner. Cause I was like, you know, like the way that she would show love and affection and like non-sexual, like touch, like, you know what I mean? Right,
right.
I'm like, please don't touch me. Like, I just like, and it's like,
you get like the Heebie Jeebies. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, you know, like it's tough. And it only really started changing and getting better until I like opened up and like, I don't think you have to like air your trauma out for people, but like just vocalize being like, hey, I know this is different about me, but like I need X, Y, and Z. And like, I want to get better at this, but like the only way that I can't get better at this is if you go at my speed and you like work through it with me. And that's like I think the thing that has been helpful, like if you export that knowledge to all sorts of different things about fears or inadequacies or feeling like you're not good enough or like having weird quirks and like, you know, like, it's okay to be yourself, but it's also like, I'm not trying to say that we should all be like moving towards this like central mean of like idealized, like this is how everybody should act and feel. Like, I'm obviously, there's a lot of diversity
Right.
here, but there's something about this idea of you can retrain your brain. We can argue till we're blue in the face about what different levels of supplements will do as you go through that process. But I do think like one of the most powerful tools that we have is like, we're the only animals that we know of that can talk and communicate with each other in complex ways. Like, you should use that to your advantage when you're trying to work through things, being like, I'm in this rut, or I'm attached to this thing I shouldn't be attached to. Like, it's 2023. We're more accepting now than we've ever been in your entire life before. Like, vocalize those things to people and be like, can you help me work through this? And like, be an active participant as I work through it myself.
And I will say, what's so interesting, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that personal, fact, because it brings up something for me, which is something that I was going to talk about, not even on the podcast. I was going to do just a kind of a quick video on my Instagram, because I wanted to, selfishly, I think the reason why I use my Instagram by posting little videos is because I want to know that I'm not alone, right? Like, we all want to know that we're not alone. We all want to hear that someone else has been through something that we've been through. And I, unlike you, have been the complete opposite of someone where I'm a very touchy-feely person with my friends. I love and I'm not, and not in a sexual way, but just like what you're saying, like, I'm always giving hugs to people. I'm always holding people's hands. I'm very much affectionate like that. And since I gave birth, and I had a very traumatic birth, since I had to have a DNC, 3 weeks afterwards, I had people poking and prodding my vagina 24 hours a day. Like, it was a lot. I'm so traumatized to the point where I don't even like Sturgis to even like give me a hug. Like, I get the Heebie Jeebies. And it's something that I was so embarrassed of, and something I was so ashamed of, where I even recently went, there was I was gifted from Sturgis, like this massage, basically, like to have a massage, right? And I went in there and I was like, nope, you know what? I can't do this, because I did not want a stranger to touch me. I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, there's nothing personal, but I am so traumatized. And it was the first time I had vocalized, I have trauma from what I went through. I do not want to be touched. It's something that I need to start. And it, just even by saying it out loud, made it feel like, oh, this is okay. You know what I mean? This is okay. And every time I would leave my pelvic floor therapy, I was going to pelvic floor therapy once to twice a week. And they would have to, very graphic, like, put their hands inside me to make sure that my Kegels were working, my pelvic floor was contracting. But I knew it was for a reason, and it was helping me, and it was women, and it was an incredible company, doctors. But hearing that the brain is plastic, right? And hearing that this is not permanent. This is not something that I cannot fix. This isn't something that cannot be like molded differently very soon. Right? It's not like I'm going to live with this for the rest of my life. It's very inspiring, and it's very exciting to know, like, oh, wow, look at, something that might have happened to you. You've been able to work through it, and look at, you have a healthy relationship with your wife, and you're better at this. And I think that it all goes back to, a lot of, people have written in that have had sexual traumas and stuff when they were younger, and not knowing how to be in relationships, and just knowing that our brain is plastic, that it is moldable, that it is changeable, that we can get through this just by having conversations and finding the right people. It's just so helpful. And I think what a great Valentine's Day that we can share this little, like, wink to everyone that there is hope. There is hope with our attachment style. That's it. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to the people, from the people.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.